Hey everybody, welcome back to GarageBand Guitarist. I'm excited for this lesson because it's our first real guitar lesson. And so we're actually going to play guitar today. We've gotten done with the preliminary stuff, and so we're going to pick up the guitar and go at it now. In this lesson, what we're going to do is learn 2 chords, and then in the next lesson, we're going to learn 3 more chords. And with those 5 chords, you are going to be able to play literally hundreds of songs, maybe thousands of songs. There's so many songs that rely on these 3 chords. And even as we go on further in the course, we'll build on those 5 chords to access even more songs. So these are really fundamentally important in the kind of music that we're learning in this course: rock, pop, folk, and country music. Okay, all use these chords just absolutely a ton. So let's get going. Grab your guitar, make sure it's tuned up, and if you don't know how to do that, I did cover that in the last lesson in the preliminary material. So get that tuned up and let's go to it. It's time to play guitar. All right, so the first 2 chords that we're going to learn are called minor chords, okay? And in music, there are kind of 2 big categorizations of chords. They're called minor chords and major chords. Minor and major chords. And we'll talk about the structure of them and why they sound different a little bit later on in the course. But the way we usually think about these chords is that the major chords sound kind of happy and the minor chords sound kind of sad, okay? And that's the way people usually think about the chords. So here's a minor chord. It sounds a little sad, and if you contrast that with the same chord but a major version of it, the major one sounds a little more happy. Major chord. Major chord. Minor chord. And they're used that way in a lot of music to evoke different kinds of emotional feels in the music, okay? So today we're going to learn some minor chords because they're easy. These particular ones are really easy to finger on the guitar, and they're a great place to start. And then in the next lesson, we'll do some major chords, and we put them together in different ways in music to get different kinds of feel in the music, okay? But that's the kind of different distinction in how people think about the sound of minor versus major chords, okay? All right, let's do those two sad chords. So the ones we're going to learn today are E minor and A minor. Okay, and as we're going along and learning these chords, we're also going to learn how to read chord charts, okay, which is going to be very important. You've probably seen those before, but we're going to talk about how to read those and all the information that's packed into a chord chart, in particular the kind of chord charts that we're going to use in this course. So we'll get you up to speed on that as well, and that'll be really helpful to us as we go through the rest of the course too. All right, let's start with the E minor chord, and this is what it sounds like. Okay, that's the E minor chord. So how do you play the E minor chord? Well, let's start by mapping it out on a chord chart so you can see what we're going to do. What is a chord chart? All right, well, here is a blank, completely blank chord chart. All right, now this ought to look somewhat familiar to you because you have something else that kind of looks like it right in front of you, right in your hand right now, and it's your guitar. And what this is just a little map of your guitar neck, okay? And that thicker line at the top, that represents the nut of the guitar. So, this is basically just, if you hold your guitar like this, it's the same thing as the chord chart, right? So there's the nut up here, and then those lines going down across it are the frets, right? So the different frets. And the lines going up and down are the strings. And so that little grid is the same thing as your guitar neck. So this little chart here is showing the first 1, 2, 3, 4 frets of the guitar and the nut. All right? And what we're going to do then is we're going to put little marks on this that indicate where we should put our fingers and press down the strings. Okay? So that's going to tell us how to play the chord. All right? So this is really easy. So here's the chord chart with the markers for the E minor chord. Okay? So here we have it. And we've got those two dots on there. And those dots represent this spot right here. It's on this second lowest string on the second fret right here. And then the one right next to it on this string right here. Okay? That's what that's telling us. All right? So the string on the far left, as you're looking at it, that's the low string on the guitar, right? Okay? It's this. Okay. All right. And so as we go, so we push down those two spots on our guitar, and that's how you make the E minor chord. All right. Now, there's more in a chord chart than that. I'm kind of sequentially going to add the pieces of the chord chart so you understand what's going on. So, so this next version of the same chord chart shows chord charts like this usually have the name of the chord at the top. So this is E minor. So this E and a lowercase m means an E minor chord. So that's the name of the chord at the top. And then I've also added in these open circles up at the top there. And what that means is you play the string open. Okay, so when we play an E minor chord, we're going to play those two strings we press down, obviously, but we're also going to play all of the other strings. And so up at the top there, all of those little O's indicate that those strings are going to be played open. So this one, the first one's open, then we've got the two fretted ones, and then we've got the rest of them open as well. All right? And so that's what those little O's mean. Now, in an E minor chord, you play all of the strings, and so there's an O on all of the strings except for the two that you're pushing down, of course. But there's some chords where you don't play all the strings. And when that happens, what we do is we put a little X at the top. All right? Now, you wouldn't really play an E minor chord like this. You'd play all the strings. But I wanted to show you what that X meant. So if that were the case, if we saw that, we would only play the strings starting with the A string, which is the second thickest, second lowest string, all the way down the rest of them. And we wouldn't play this lowest string, the E string. But in an E minor chord, you're going to play that full thing. So that's just to show you what the notation means. Okay. All right. So now we're going to add a couple other little helpful things to this chord chart. You'll see chord charts printed that have some of these features and not in the chord chart, but I'm going to use all of these as we go along because it'll help you remember how to make the chord. Okay. So the next thing that we add to the chord chart here, you can see what I've done is put some little numbers inside the markers for your fingers. And what that does is it tells you which finger to put where, okay? So we've got those two dots down there, but what fingers should we use to press them down? Should we use these two in the middle? Should we use these two? Should we use these two? What do we do, okay? And so those tell us what to do. So your fingers will be numbered for the sake of this 1, 2, 3, 4, okay? 1, 2, put that middle finger up by itself. 1, 2, 3, 4, all right? That's how the fingers are numbered. And so if it says, in this case, 1 and 2, we're going to use our first and second finger. And so our first finger is going to go on the A string on the second fret. That's that second lowest string right there, that spot right there. And then right next to it, we're going to have our third finger, and that's going to go on the D string, okay, on the second fret. So we've got the 1 and the 2, and that tells us what fingers to use. Now actually, you can play, you don't have to use 1 and 2 to do that. You can use 2 and 3. And there's reasons why you might do it with 3 and 4 sometimes, okay? But for our purposes in this lesson, let's use 1 and 2. And then you strum, and that's your E minor chord. And so that's what it should sound like when you play it. Look at that. You've already got a chord down. E minor chord. You're ready to play. It's one of the easiest ones to play on the guitar, and so it's a great one to start with, okay? You can make a nice sounding chord with a pretty simple hand position that feels natural to you, okay? Something else I was going to say about that E minor chord. Oh, well, I was going to mention where to put your fingers relative to the frets. Now, what you want to do is put your fingers as close as you can up to, when you're putting it in between 2 frets, you want to put it as close as you can up to the higher one, right? Because that's the one you're really holding the string against, and you want a nice vibration from the bottom of the guitar right up to that fret, right? And you get a nice clean sound if you're close to the fret. If you go back too far, you can get this kind of thing where it's not being pressed fully onto the fret. And so you want to stay up as close as you can to that fret when you push it down. Now, with this one, we got to fit 2 fingers in there, so one of them's not going to be super close to the fret, but just get it up there as close as you can, and you'll make good contact with the fret, and that'll help you have a nice clear sound. So generally speaking, in that space, try to be up a little closer to the upper one, and you'll get a better sound, okay? All right, now let's move to the last version of the chord chart. I'm going to add one more piece of information in here. And so here, what I've done is at the bottom, I've added some letters down there. And those letters are the notes that are being produced by each string, okay? So with the E minor chord, the first string is open. We know that's an E, right? Those are the notes that we tune the string to. And so, so when we play it open, that's the note. And so what I've done is I wrote an E down there, okay? The next one is a B. Well, that's the first one that we're fretting. That's a B note. And so I wrote a B down there. That's what's being produced by what's going on in the chord chart. The third one is a E. Oops. Okay, so we've got an E, and then a B, and then we've got a higher E, up an octave. Okay, and then the remaining strings are open ones, and so they're notes that we tuned the strings to. So the next one is a G, that's open, and so G down there, and then a B, and then the high E. So in this E minor chord, we've got 3 different notes. We've got E, G, and B, okay? And those are the notes that make up a E minor chord, all right? Now, we've got 3 different E's in the chord. We've got the lowest one, we've got the one up an octave, and then we've got the highest one on our open string up here, okay? And so, and that's fine. A lot of times in chords you'll have notes like that repeat. So there it is. That's an E minor chord, and then the notes are down there at the bottom, all right? And that'll become helpful to us more as we go further down the road, but I'm going to always use these kind of chord charts that have the fingerings on the dots, on the markers in the middle in the chart, and then at the bottom I'm going to say what note is being produced by that string in however it's being fretted, okay? All right, so now you know how the chord charts work, and bonus, you learned how to play an E minor chord as we were learning the chord chart. All right, I think that's it for E minor. So we've got E minor down. Let's turn to our second chord, which is A minor. Okay, so we learned E minor, now we're going to learn A minor. This is what it sounds like. Okay. That's A minor, that's what we're going to go for here. And here is the chord chart for A minor. All right, and we'll just take a look at it before we try to play it. But we've got 3 strings open. We've got our 2 lowest strings that are going to be open, and we've got our highest string that's going to be open. And so we're going to fret 3 strings in this chord. Okay, so it's a little bit more complicated than an E minor chord, but you can see the little pattern that we're going to try to produce here. All right, now let me build this up by starting with the E minor chord and transitioning from that E minor position over to the A minor. All right, so here we go. Put our hand back in the E minor. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to pick up our index finger, our 1 finger, all right, but we're going to leave our number 2 finger, our middle finger, we're going to leave that one down where it is because that's going to be in the A minor chord too. So I pick up this one, but I still have this one in place, okay? All right, and then right next to it, so I've got my 2 there, and then right next to it, I'm going to put my 3 finger, 1, 2, 3, right next to it. All right, so on the G string on the 2nd fret, and that's the note that should be produced. When I put that one down, and if you look on the chart, you can see I've got a 3 on that dot right next to the 2 one. All right, and we're almost there, but now what we got to do is we got to put our index finger back down, but somewhere else. And so where we're going to put that is on the B string, which is the next to highest one, and we're going to put it on the 1st fret. So you can see where that is there. I've got my 1 finger is going to be on the 1st fret on the B string, okay? All right, and that is the A minor chord, okay? And you strum all of them, as you can see there in the chord chart. And down at the bottom, you can see what notes are in the A minor chord and are being produced by each string. So the open E, then we've got an open A, and then we've got an E being produced on the next string. We've got a being produced on the next string. That's the G string, and we're up 2 frets, so it's an A. And then we've got a C being produced on the B string, because we're up 1 fret from B. And then finally, we've got an open E. And so those are the chord, or the notes in an A minor chord. Okay. Again, there's 3 notes in the chord, but we have a couple of, we have 3 E's in there, and we have 2 A's and 1 C. But as long as they're A, C, and E, and all the notes in it, it's going to be an A minor chord. Okay? All right, there it is. Now, the reason that I start you with these 2 chords is because one of the challenges of playing the guitar is transitioning between the chords and getting from one to the other, and you got to get there fast enough, right? And so when you're playing along, you can't have a big pause while you're trying to get to the next chord. No, you got to make it quick. So you got to get immediately from one to another. And that's one of the things you're going to have to practice, is making those transitions and making them smoother and faster. That'll come as we go along. But E minor and A minor are 2 chords that it's quite easy to transition between because you don't move one of your fingers. And so it kind of helps anchor you so you can practice that transition back and forth. Remember, we left our middle finger down the whole time when we were learning how to make the A minor chord, when we were moving from the E minor position. And so that's what you do. You have the E minor, and then you shift to the A minor, but you didn't move the position of your middle finger. And so when you're practicing doing that transition, it's easier than some other ones where you got to move all of your fingers in a completely different position. So like that's a lot of movement, and getting all your fingers in all of those right spots is challenging, right? But with these 2, it's a little bit easier because you're not moving your middle finger. okay? And so practice that, okay? So learn how to get your fingers in those positions, okay? And then practice going back and forth between them. Now, that's a little boring right now because you've only got 2 chords to work with. But, you know, just try to do it and try to keep making it more smooth and more quick, you know? So maybe, you know, hit it twice or something. Try different things to, you know, entertain yourself while you're working on getting that down. Go real slow at first, right? And if you work on that for a while, it won't take too long. You'll start to get better at it. Just remember, as you're doing these things, everything new takes practice, and particularly at the beginning here, this is going to be challenging, but it won't take you too long. You'd be surprised how quickly it'll start to come together if you just, you know, pick up the guitar and do it, right? It'll work out great. Okay, I think that's it. That's it for this lesson. We have learned chord charts and we've learned 2 chords. So the next one, we're going to learn 3 more chords. They're a little bit tougher. So you may want to practice and try to get those E minor, A minors down a little bit before you go on to the next course. But if you want to go see what's coming next, go right ahead. Look forward to seeing you in the next lesson.